those years I was finding myself as an artist, so I was making it up as I went along. And so with much of the stuff, I didn't know where I was going. It was kind of like, but I knew I wanted to get there really fast. So it was like driving your car in pitch blackness with no headlights on, and the only way you're going to get there is by accelerating as fast as you possibly can and just hoping you don't crash. And it's kind of like that. So I think what I guided myself by was just try to be honest as much as I can. And the virtue of that is that anybody else, if I'm truly honest, that, and you know, I'm trusting the fact that I'm like everybody else. If other people are going to come to this work, they'll recognize themselves a little bit in it, and that will be the connection between the art and the viewer. And you know, I had recognized going to art museums that that's what I enjoyed there, was seeing the connection between me and that artist across time. Because if they were really honestly in their artwork, and I would come as a viewer and look at it, there would be a connection. And I, as an artist, wanted to provide that connection. So, you know, funny things happen along the way. Being in front of a camera or writing on things like this, it becomes performative, almost as a self-defense mechanism. So where I thought I was being honest, sometimes I would realize I was stepping into the Sean Landers character. So that's something that just sort of got developed along the way. And as far as the look of just, you know, ballpoint pen on paper and everything, and the really informal look to a lot of this work, I think I was emboldened by that. I went to Italy as an art student, went to Florence, went into the Medici Chapel. You know, it's a temple to, you know, the genius of Michelangelo. But there's this one room where the plaster is raw on the walls, and they have his sort of graphite or charcoal drawings that, like doodles that you would make, kind of doodles you would do while talking to the contractor, which you know he was dealing with contractors constantly. So he'd be sitting there and he'd just draw like little bird people, little things. And I found all the rest of his work is just off-putting. You know, I wasn't finding that connection. But with these things, I found it immediately. I found my connection with the artist across time. So I thought, like, it's in the smaller moments and that I would trust in myself. Doodles, you know, like are on the drawings in the back, or captions in a calendar, little things like this behind me, quick little sculptural heads, or things I say on video to carry the message, whatever message I have, you know, in my artwork forward in time. And so I think that's the first half of your question. The second half of your question was, what does it feel like to come here? It's a cocktail of true pride and like a martini, the pride would be the vodka, but it's flavored by shame, and that would be the vermouth. So that's how it feels. Like, I'm truly embarrassed of this stuff, but then again, I'm proud I'm the guy who did it. So, because, you know, almost 20 years later, it still seems, you know, edgy to me, and it seems like, you know, if I didn't know me, I think like, well, that guy's really putting himself on the line. He's really going out there on a limb, and, you know, even if I didn't really like the dude, I would think at least appreciate him for having done that. So that's kind of like, I can see it objectively and subjectively. I'm proud objectively, shamed subjectively. Yeah, the text is the main body of what I do. Everything comes out of it. I like to think of it as the trunk of a tree, and all the other things I've done over the last 20 years are branches that come out of that main trunk. Stream of consciousness. There's many reasons I was led to that. The first one I thought of in this interview is just that our thoughts are our primary experience of life, because we walk around behind our own eyeballs and our brains are constantly reeling all day long and then at nighttime in our dreams. So it's the soundtrack. It is the primary experience of life, is your consciousness. And I thought, well, no one is using that to make artwork, so I just wanted it to make it be the main stuff of my artwork. It's the most available material. Whenever you might have the thought, I'm not thinking of anything, I don't know what to think about. It's totally not true if you just sort of think like, well, what am I thinking about? Oh, that. I'll write that down. Sometimes while writing, I'll hit pockets of inspiration, and the writing speed picks up, and I'll stumble upon bits of writing that I think are actually, writery or worth, like if I were an editor, those are the parts I'd save. But I think the value of the work is that all the other connective thoughts are in there too. So the low moments are recorded as well as the high moments. But I saw value in that, in literature too. When I was formulating this, reading books from the turn of the last century, there's like three authors who sort of pioneered the writing from the inside of the main character's head as a way to approach writing a novel. One was Dostoevsky in Crime and Punishment. You are often in the inside of the main character, Rody Raskolnikov's head in that book, and then you'll be outside his head. In James Joyce's Ulysses, you are constantly, without warning, going from the interior to the exterior of a character, within the same scene, back and forth. And it's disorienting, which it's what makes that book in part so difficult to read, is you don't know which reality you're in. Am I in his head or am I outside of his head? And the other author was Knut Hamsun, and he wrote a trilogy of books, Hunger, Pan, and Mysteries. Hunger is the one that really sort of set me going, because it was about a writer living in Christiania, which is now Oslo, in Norway. Him struggling, couldn't make any money, feeling outside of society because he was an artist. He was trying to live through creativity, could get no reward, and how alienated he felt. And the majority of the book happened within inside of the main character's head. So when I was reading those books, I just felt like this is my thing, and that sort of dovetailed with the first thought that I expressed here, and then I sort of began to trust that stream of consciousness writing would be the main. It would be from my main access into my body of work and where everything would come from. What's unique to almost everything in here is everything is a blank, starts off a blank that I filled up. So it's either a blank canvas like this, and I have to keep filling it until, writing until it's filled. It could be a blank hour of videotape, and I sit in front of the camera, talk until it's filled, or sing or dance or whatever it is. Or if it's calendar pages, there's one little cube for every day, has to be filled up. For the clay, it'd be just like one little lump of clay, and on top of a pole that I knew that I was going to make into somebody's head. And that too is related to stream of conscious writing, in that I'd start sculpting not knowing what I was going to make. I knew it was going to be a head. That's about it. So as soon as you put, you have a lump of clay, you put your thumbs in, you make 2 eye holes, and just a little bit of a mouth. That's enough for it probably to just remind you of somebody you've met before. So that I would do that, and then I would just sculpt in the direction of kind of the first person. It was almost like a Rorschach or something, 3D Rorschach. I would see the thing, I'd free associate and go in that direction. I was later make paintings that way of images, in the later 90s, so they're not in this show, but, that was one of the things the surrealists talked about, I later found out, is that they would trust their subconscious to come up with their imagery as well. So that I realized this whole body of work is sort of related to them in that way, because it's just trusting my subconscious. And when you let as much hang out there as I have with this, like, people are very good readers. So whatever I write and I think I'm writing about, the reader is coming at that material and reading between the lines and seeing things about me that I probably didn't intend, and about my character and things like that. So when I was letting it all hang out like that, I was creating another picture, one that I just had to trust, would be, wouldn't ruin me or. So, yeah, my work is built off this. So this would be like the roots and the trunk in my tree analogy. So, yeah, everything's built off of this. Although it's, it's evolved quite a bit. But, yeah, I recognize this. I recognize it not only in my own character, but I recognize this in the work that I make today, very much so. I think that's really what Paul wanted. That's the show Paul wanted to put together, to show that the things that I make today are built on something like a broad foundation of artworks that were made over many years. So, and that it's all connected. And I think people familiar with what I've done for the last 20 years, if they can see the show, would hopefully recognize that. I think they would.